Welcome to IVF This, episode 195, IVF and the Worst Feeling. Welcome to IVF This. I'm your host, Emily Ginn. After 10 years of primary and secondary infertility due to both male and female factor infertility, I am now the mother to 3 beautiful miracles. I am married to my favorite person in the world. I'm a social worker, a life coach, and an IVF warrior. I'm here to teach you how to manage your mind and emotions during your IVF journey, to break free from anxiety and regain control of your life, even in the midst of infertility. I'm going to teach you how to say IVF this to how we think about, talk about, and experience infertility. Let's go. Hello, my beautiful friends. I hope you are all doing so well. We, at least in the Northern Hemisphere, are dealing with just all of the viruses, all of the bugs. So I hope you are staying warm, and I hope you're staying well. We've had a few gins in our house fall victim to some tummy bugs and stuff. So I want to rebuke that in all of y'all's names, that you don't have to experience that. But if you do, I hope you're recovering well. I just want all of us to be doing good. So we're going to talk about something that comes up really very frequently. I would say universally with my clients, in coaching, in IVF spaces, in relationships, in work, and in life. It's a very universal experience. And it is this quiet but powerful belief that there is something we could not survive, right? That there is a line, there is a breaking point, that there is a thing that would absolutely undo us. And we usually talk about this thing like it's an event, right? Like another failed transfer, bad news, a loss, a no, a conversation that didn't go the way we had hoped, a door closing, whatever the imagery or the event that you think it is. But what I want to kind of gently suggest today is that the thing is not the thing. And what I mean by that is what we are actually afraid of is the feeling we imagine the thing will create for us. Okay, again, I'm going to say that one more time. The thing is not the thing. The thing that we're afraid of happening isn't actually what we're afraid of, right? We don't want that thing to happen, right? But that's different than the fear that that thing evokes. What we're truly afraid of is the feeling, is the emotional aftermath, the emotional fallout of that thing happening. But if that's true, if a feeling is the worst thing that can happen to us, I got to tell you, friends, everything changes. Okay. We say things like, I couldn't survive another failed transfer. I couldn't handle hearing no. I couldn't live with the regret. I couldn't get through the grief. And I want you to notice something. When we say these sentences, what we really mean is, I could not survive how I would feel. Not the logistics, not the calendar, not the practical fallout of whatever that thing is, but the emotional experience. This is an important distinction because our brains are actually very good at disguising emotional fear as practical fear, right? That's why we tend to confuse the thing is what we're afraid of when we're actually afraid of the feeling. It's because our brain is like, well, emotional fear and practical fear feel the exact same. So I'm going to label it practical fear. And because no one teaches us about our emotions, right? Just in general. We tell ourselves that we're afraid of potential or specific outcomes, but underneath, what we're afraid of is feelings. So I have this worksheet and this exercise that I often invite my clients to do either with me or kind of on their own as quote unquote homework. And that is where we name the worst feeling they can imagine. Not the worst event, not the worst diagnosis, not the worst case scenario, just the feeling. And answers are incredibly human, as you would imagine. Hopelessness, powerlessness, shame, grief, loneliness, regret. Right? Those are just the most common. There are other emotions that come up too, but those are the ones that I see the most often. What is fascinating is that two people can fear completely different situations and still land on the exact same emotional destination. Because again, it was never about the thing, right? And the body knows when we slow down even further in the exercise and ask ourselves, what does this feeling actually feel like in our bodies? People tend to say things like, my chest feels tight, my stomach drops, it feels heavy, it feels hollow, it feels frozen, I feel shaky, I feel unsettled, right? And then we ask, how do you imagine you would react to that feeling, right? Would you might try to avoid it? Would you might try to dull it? Would you might try to resist it? And this is where we start to see patterns, right? The overing patterns, avoidance, overfunctioning, numbing, people pleasing, control, busyness, perfectionism. Not because we're weak. You're not weak. You're a freaking goddess. You're doing IVF. You're not weak, right? But because somewhere along the way, our nervous system learned the story, this feeling is too much. So when we avoid things like hard conversations, decisions, hope, attachment, grief, risk, we're not avoiding the thing. We're avoiding the emotional experience we believe we would not survive. And just a quick little caveat on the avoidance piece. Avoidance isn't neutral. It's just deferring the cost, right? The emotional experience doesn't disappear. It still happens. And your willingness to allow it rather than fight it is what determines how long it stays with you and how powerful the experience is. And I'm going to talk about that in a couple of minutes, but I just want to make clear avoidance is a pretty normal human desire. If you're not really connected to your body, or if you have that story of emotions and specific emotions do not feel safe. But avoidance doesn't come at no cost, right? Oftentimes when we avoid something, it doesn't just go away in our minds. We still carry it. We still hold on to it. So we're actually creating an intensified emotional experience by avoiding it. But again, it's all about the emotion. And this belief that some emotions are dangerous or we don't feel safe feeling them, quietly organizes our entire life. It determines what we try for, it determines what we hope for, it determines what we say out loud, and what we let ourselves want, especially in IVF. Because IVF asks us over and over and over again to be in relationship with uncertainty, disappointment, and grief. And if we believe that certain feelings are intolerable, of course we're going to contort ourselves trying to avoid them. The mental gymnastics we'll try and go through to avoid these feelings is pretty impressive, like from an observer standpoint, also a doer standpoint. Because if you think that I opt out of this, you're wrong. I'm still human. I still do this all the time. But again, we don't get to ride for free. The emotions are going to be there either way. So here's the reframe that I've been working on personally over the last few years. And I believe it changes kind of everything. And I want this to really, really land for you. If a feeling is the worst thing that can happen to us, then it is something we can learn to tolerate. One more time. If a feeling is the worst thing that can happen to us, we are capable, we are able to learn how to tolerate those emotions. Okay? Feelings are not fatal. It can feel like that, particularly feelings like shame and grief. They can feel so overpowering. It can feel like it's going to kill you. I'll be completely honest. It feels like it could kill you, but it can't. Feelings are not fatal. They are not permanent, and they are not proof that something has gone wrong. They are experiences, painful ones, unwanted ones, but still experiences. And when someone learns that they can feel a feeling fully, honestly, and willingly, which is a really important part, and stay present in that emotion, unstoppable. You become unstoppable. It is so incredibly powerful. 99% of the world doesn't know how to do this. 99% of the world tries to avoid or dismiss or cover up or distract from these emotions. If you can do this, you're one of the most powerful beings on this earth. Not in a hyperbolic sense. You will have created emotional mastery and emotional discipline for yourself, and a lifelong skill. A lifelong skill. So before I tell you again what to do with the feelings, we have to talk about how we relate to the feelings. Because a lot of us approach emotions, particularly these bigger, more powerful, uncomfortable emotions, with a hidden agenda. Okay? And it sounds like I'll sit with this, but it's got to be gone. Right? I'll give it 10 minutes. I grew up, my mom used to say, like, you can wallow for 30 minutes. Fantastic. It didn't really work that way, right? Because I gave it a time, we had a time specific thing. I know what she was trying to do, but the more that we understand emotional experiences and things like that, when we give an agenda, something like, I'll let myself feel this, but only for a little bit, or I'll tolerate this as long as it goes away. When I want you to hear this gently, I'll try and be gentle. When we bring an agenda to pain, we actually prolong it. Not because we're failing, but because our nervous system can sense the pressure, the time pressure that we've placed on it. It knows we're waiting for the feeling to leave, and it communicates something very specific. It reiterates, this is not safe for me to feel. So the emotion stays louder, more consistent, and becomes more consuming. Not to punish us, like our brain and our bodies aren't doing these things to punish us, but because it hasn't fully been received yet. Our brain and our body just want to know that we're doing something with it without the additional pressure of, well, I got 15 minutes and this is what it's gonna, I'm allowing myself to feel jealousy. I'm allowing myself to feel regret. I'm allowing myself to feel XYZ, but it's got to be done. And our body senses that urgency, right? And it just prolongs and can intensify the emotion that we're actually trying to allow ourselves to feel. And this is where a lot of people confuse control, right, with regulation. We think regulation means making the feeling smaller, making it shorter, or making it go away. But real regulation, actual nervous system regulation, sounds very different. It sounds like this. You're here with me. You don't have to go, but you're not in charge of me. No deadline, no eviction notice, no bargaining. Just presence without surrendering leadership. And this is the heart of something that I have been working a lot personally so that I can bring to you guys. This is at the heart of something that I'm calling self-led co-regulation. Okay? Co-regulation is when you're using somebody else or you are the somebody else to help regulate someone. But we want self-led co-regulation. We want to be able to co-regulate with our emotions by ourselves. Okay. And there's going to be more to come on that. But that's the goal. Okay. When you're not suppressing the feeling, you're not indulging in the feeling, and you're not letting the feeling run your life. You are staying in relationship with it. This is, you've heard me talk about the relationship with yourself is the most important relationship because you're with yourself 24 hours a day from the day you're born to the day you die. Okay. So this is about staying in relationship with an aspect of yourself which is the emotions that your body and your nervous system and your brain, all of it feel. And while still staying in charge of yourself, not getting caught up in the emotion, not letting the emotion take over. And paradoxically, and I promise you this is true, this is what allows emotions to move through you more quickly, more efficiently. Because emotions don't need to be solved. They need to be met without resistance. Even like I've talked about my anxiety. I've talked some about kind of the depression that I experience and things like that. And it's true. I can't tell you how many times I've kind of rolled my eyes and been like, great, anxiety, you're hanging out with me. Cool, 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 cool. I love it. I don't actually love it. Anxiety is really uncomfortable, but I'm not going to fight it. It's there because it's there. It's trying to tell me something, whether the something is a thought that's holding in my mind that maybe isn't true, or I'm fearful of a future event or something like that. It all stands true that if I'm just allowing myself to recognize and acknowledge the emotion is there, it changes your entire experience of the emotion. It doesn't make it easier. You guys know I don't think about things in terms of easier or better, but it's just very different. It's much more grounded, it's much more neutral, and you don't get caught up in all of the other kind of shenanigans our brain wants to take us down when it's like, oh my gosh, this is terrible, this is terrible, this is terrible. You don't have that when you just welcome the emotion. Okay. So once the agenda is gone, because that's kind of the Achilles heel of allowing yourself to feel, right? Is having an agenda for it. So once the agenda is gone, now the tools that we talk about on this podcast week in and week out, they can actually work. Emotional tolerance is not built by thinking differently. We're not going to reframe the hell out of this and you just get to experience no emotion. Emotional tolerance is built by doing something different when the emotion shows up. And no, this doesn't necessarily require meditation, journaling, or a perfectly regulated nervous system. It just requires repetition and permission. Okay. So I think I have 5 ways that you can build emotional tolerance. That's all we're talking about. I also think I have a freestanding whole episode on emotional tolerance where I kind of go into that concept a little bit more. Remember, this one is just about allowing yourself to feel the worst feeling you could imagine. So 5 ways you can start building your emotional tolerance. Stay with the feeling 10% longer than you want to. Okay. So let's say you give yourself a 10-minute, like I'm gonna allow myself to feel anxious for 10 minutes. I know that's an agenda. It's not a problem. Allow yourself to feel it for 11 minutes. Give yourself just 10% more. You do not build tolerance by staying forever. You build it by slightly longer than your instinct tells you to. Okay. So 10% longer. This teaches your nervous system, I can be here and nothing terrible happens. Okay. Easy. 10%. 10%. And for that, yeah, you're allowed to have an agenda. You're allowed to have an agenda as you're learning about emotional tolerance, as you're building emotional tolerance, right? An agenda is a normal, natural thing. It just doesn't happen to be particularly helpful. Okay, so I know I went on a whole diatribe on agendas, so I just wanted to clarify that. The second thing, name what you notice, not the story. So I notice a tightness in my chest. I notice heaviness. I notice an instinct or an urge to escape. No meaning, no fixing. This shifts from being inside the feeling to being with the feeling. And that is such an important distinction, right? Because if you tell yourself, I'm anxious, well, that's part of your identity then. And being and identifying as anxiety or as an anxious person, that tells a whole lot of stories about a whole lot of things that are just not true. You are not anxiety. You are experiencing anxiety. You are feeling anxious, right? We're separating those out from the identity. Those are your experiences of it. But we're not any emotion. We are not jealous. We are experiencing jealousy. We are not regretful. We experience regret. And it is that separation that gives you the space in order to start sitting with the emotion. Remove the time pressure. So we've practiced the 10% rule, right? We're going to sit with it for 10% longer. We're practicing naming what you notice, not the story. And now it's time for us to start removing the time pressure, starting to move away from the agenda. Instead of this has to end, just kind of try like, I don't actually need this to end right now. Sometimes when I'm doing my co-led regulation, self-regulation exercise, I'll do it in journaling. And sometimes I'll even like close the journal with, I can still feel you anxiety. Like I didn't get away from it. It didn't go away just because I did this exercise. But what it did create was a little bit more space and tolerance for me to be able to say like, it's cool, you can hang out with me, right? Like a weirdo roomie that you kind of like, but like you're familiar with, but you don't really want to hang out. Like, yeah, you can hang out in the corner. That's cool. You're not going to bug me, but you don't get to be in charge. Like you don't get to make decisions for me. You're just hanging out. And I cannot overstate this enough. It drastically changes your relationship with the emotion as well as your experience with it. Full stop. Okay. Two more, promise. Let the feeling change without forcing it. When we stop interfering, basically, feelings tend to soften on their own. Okay. So maybe they change, maybe they don't. Either way, you learn I don't have to try to control it, which you can't. I don't have to try to control it to survive it. And the fifth one, we build evidence, not confidence. And I know that sounds a little bit ass backwards, but hang with me. Each time you stay, feel, and remain standing, because you will, you collect proof. Not that it didn't hurt, it will, but that you lived through it, that this wasn't the breaking point, that this didn't end. By the way, at the beginning of this episode, when I said something like, there's a breaking point, you breaking down and having a large emotional response doesn't mean that you are broken. It doesn't mean that you've had a mentee be. It doesn't mean that you've had anything other than a large emotional experience. You can call it a breakdown, but not pathologize it. Like I'm so weak that I can't get through this emotion without crying. It's an emotionally evocative experience. IVF, meetings with your boss, conflict with coworkers, your family, internal relationships, friendships. These are emotionally evocative things. You're supposed to cry if you're upset. That's why we cry. And look, I'm a bit of a stone eyes. I've been called that before. I don't tend to cry very easily, but I also don't think crying is any sign of weakness, right? So I will say that, but we build evidence, not confidence. Each time we stay, feel, and remain standing, we collect proof. Not that it didn't hurt, but that you lived through it. That evidence is what reduces the resistance over time and actually allows you to stay more present and more willing to sit with that emotion. And I feel like this is kind of a thought I would have had a few years ago if someone had presented me with this information is like, well, like, does that mean I want pain? No, no, this isn't about seeking suffering. Believe me, in the world of infertility and IVF, you don't have to seek that far to find pain, right? It's not about minimizing pain, and it's assuredly not about toxic positivity. Avoidance shrinks us. Remember that story it tells you about what you can achieve, what you can do, who you are? Avoidance shrinks us, it makes us smaller. Tolerance expands us, it gives us space. Emotional tolerance is an incredibly learnable skill. Okay? It's not like I'm still learning. I'm multiple years into these concepts, into these tools that I present you guys. I am still learning it every single day. The other day, I was so overstimulated and so anxious and so snappy with my youngest. And she went off. I was very rude to her. And then I reminded myself, she's actually doing very age appropriate things. Emily, you're okay. Nobody's killing you. She's not like wielding a weapon. You're not in danger. That's part of building emotional tolerance. I had to sit with the fact that I was overstimulated and I was reacting from that place. Not perfection. None of this is about perfection. This is just about allowing it to be there so you can build that skill. Okay? Instead of asking yourself, what if this goes wrong? Whatever this is, try asking, if I felt the worst feeling I can imagine, what would I need to survive it? I guarantee you, compassion, compassion, compassion. You already have the capability to survive the worst thing you could imagine. You're still here. Okay? So, you're not fragile because your feelings hurt. You are powerful because you can feel deeply and remain standing. Once you can truly embody and trust that, there are very few things left to fear. So, I'm glad you're here. I hope you found this helpful. I hope you have a beautiful week, and I'll talk to you soon. Bye-bye. Thank you for listening to this week's episode of IVF This. If you like what you've heard, click subscribe and follow to make sure you don't miss an episode. And if you want to learn more, head over to www.ivfthiscoaching.com to learn how to work together.